The moonlight carved silver patterns across the marble floor of their penthouse bedroom, and Ariya David stood at the center of it all, wrapped in emerald silk that whispered against her dark skin with every breath. Cool stone kissed her bare feet as she waited, the scent of sandalwood incense mixing with the lingering notes of Kael's cologne, something expensive and dangerous, like everything else in his world. 40 stories below, Seoul's traffic hummed a distant lullaby. But up here, in this glass tower that touched the clouds, there was only silence and anticipation. The bathroom door opened with a soft click. Kael Joon-Soo emerged through a veil of steam, water droplets tracing paths down his bare chest, catching the moonlight like diamonds on golden skin. His movements held that dangerous grace she'd learned to recognize, predatory yet protective, a panther who'd chosen to be gentle. 6 months of marriage, and she was still learning to navigate the contradiction of him. The man who could order deaths with a phone call, yet traced her face like she was made of porcelain. The air between them thickened with unspoken desire and the ever-present power dynamics that defined their union. Her pulse quickened as he approached, his dark eyes never leaving hers, reading every flicker of emotion she tried to hide. "You're nervous," he observed, voice like silk over steel. "I'm not." Ariya lied, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Kael stopped inches away, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his skin, smell the mint on his breath. His fingers lifted to her jaw, tilting her face upward with infinite patience. "Tonight, let me show you who I really am." Her breath caught. After 6 months in his world of violence and control, of learning to be a mafia wife, while keeping her own identity intact, she thought she knew him. But the vulnerability in his eyes suggested otherwise. This was something different, something deeper. He leaned down, his lips barely brushing her ear. "Trust me, ne sarung." "I do," she whispered, and meant it, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and suddenly the silk nightgown felt too thin, too flimsy a barrier between them. She could feel every plane and angle of him, the controlled strength in his arms, the barely restrained hunger that matched her own. When his mouth finally claimed hers, it was both possession and question, dominance and devotion. Ariya's fingers curled into his damp hair as he lifted her effortlessly, carrying her toward their massive bed. The city lights danced across the ceiling like stars, and for a moment, they existed in their own universe. No obligations, no enemies, no secrets. He laid her down with reverent care, hovering above her, his weight supported on his forearms. "Ariya," he breathed her name like a prayer, his hand sliding along her thigh, pushing silk aside. "Tell me what you need." The intensity of the moment overwhelmed her, his size, his strength, the raw desire in his eyes. It's so big," she gasped, vulnerability making her voice tremble. "Kael, please be gentle." His expression softened instantly, one hand coming up to cup her face with infinite tenderness. "I will always be gentle with you, Ariya. Trust me." The promise in his voice wrapped around her like a blanket, and she felt herself relaxing into his touch. The moment stretched, perfect and fragile, as their bodies began to move together. Then his phone vibrated violently on the nightstand. The sound shattered the intimacy like a gunshot. Kael's entire body went rigid, his expression transforming from tender lover to cold mafia boss in a heartbeat. Ariya felt the shift, felt the walls slam back into place, and her stomach dropped. "Ignore it," she pleaded, her hands on his chest. But he was already pulling away, reaching for the device with the precision of someone who knew that in his world, a late-night message could mean the difference between life and death. The screen's blue glow illuminated his face, turning his features harsh and unfamiliar. His jaw clenched. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Kael." Ariya sat up, pulling the silk around her like armor. "What's wrong?" He stared at the phone, his knuckles white around the edges. On the screen, she caught a glimpse of an encrypted message, just 3 words visible before he angled it away. "She's not who." Before we continue, A voice seemed to whisper in the charged air between them. Hit that subscribe button and comment where you're watching from, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about loyalty and betrayal. Kael's eyes, when they finally met hers, held something she'd never seen before: doubt. And in the world they inhabited, doubt was more dangerous than any bullet. "Nothing," he said, but the lie sat heavy between them. "It's nothing." But Ariya knew better. In 6 months, she'd learned to read the micro-expressions that crossed his face, the tells that no one else could see. This wasn't nothing. This was everything about to change. 1 year earlier, Manhattan. Ariya had sworn she'd never fall for another controlling man. Standing in that Chelsea art gallery, champagne flute warming in her hand, she'd been content in her carefully reconstructed independence. 2 years since Marcus. 2 years since she'd escaped a relationship that had slowly suffocated her identity beneath the weight of someone else's expectations. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Baby girl, you don't need a man to complete you. You're already whole." At 28, Ariya had built something real. David & Associates Interior Design, a small but respected firm she'd co-founded with Chioma, her best friend since Howard University. They specialized in luxury residential spaces, and tonight's gallery opening was for a potential client who collected contemporary Korean art. She hadn't expected the art collector to bring a bodyguard, or for the bodyguard to look like sin incarnated in a Tom Ford suit. Kael Joon-Soo stood beside a massive canvas depicting Seoul's night skyline in aggressive brushstrokes, and he was studying it with an intensity that suggested he saw something beyond paint and canvas. He was tall, 6'2" at least, with the kind of face that belonged in Korean dramas: sharp jaw, expressive eyes, black hair styled with careless perfection. But it was his stillness that captured her attention. In a room full of Manhattan's chattering elite, he existed in his own gravity well. The artist is trying to capture nostalgia and violence in the same frame, she found herself saying, moving closer. The city as both home and battlefield. His eyes shifted to her, and the intelligence in them surprised her. Not the dull assessment of a hired muscle, but genuine curiosity. "You understand Korean art?" "I understand longing," Ariya replied. "That's universal." A smile ghosted across his lips. "I'm Kael." Ariya, what she'd assumed would be a 5-minute conversation, stretched into 2 hours. He wasn't a bodyguard. He was the client himself, though he'd let her believe otherwise initially. He spoke 5 languages fluently, had studied philosophy at Oxford before family obligations called him back to Seoul. He quoted Kierkegaard and knew obscure facts about Basquiat. When he asked about her work, he actually listened, asked questions that showed he understood the psychology of space and color. "Why interior design?" he'd asked over their 3rd glass of champagne. "Because I believe environments shape us," she'd answered honestly. "If you control your space, you control part of your narrative." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, perhaps, or respect. "Control is important to you. Autonomy is important to me. There's a difference." He'd smiled then, really smiled, and she felt something shift in her carefully guarded heart. What Ariya didn't know that night was that Kael Joon-Soo wasn't just wealthy and cultured. He was the heir to one of Seoul's most powerful crime families, a position he'd inherited at 16 when his father was murdered in their family home. She didn't know that his appreciation for philosophy came from years of trying to rationalize the violence he'd witnessed, or that his control issues weren't personality quirks, but survival mechanisms forged in blood and betrayal. She learned those truths slowly, over dinners in Manhattan and Tokyo, during late-night phone calls when he was in Seoul and she was in New York. By the time he proposed, 6 months after that gallery opening, on a rooftop in Paris with the Eiffel Tower glittering behind him, she knew what she was saying yes to, or thought she did. "Girl, you're trading one cage for another," Chioma had warned during the wedding planning, her voice tight with concern. They sat in Ariya's apartment, surrounded by fabric swatches and seating charts, and her best friend's dark eyes held genuine fear. "Marcus tried to control you with manipulation. This man, Ariya, he controls people for a living. He's different," Ariya insisted, though doubt flickered in her chest. He sees me, Chioma, the real me. He doesn't want to change me. He wants to protect you. In his world, that's the same thing as controlling you. But Ariya had been determined to prove everyone wrong. She could love Kael and keep her identity. She could be his wife without becoming his possession. She could navigate his dangerous world while maintaining her independence. The first real test came 3 weeks after their wedding, when she discovered Kael had assigned bodyguards to follow her without asking. They'd shown up outside her office building, 2 stone-faced men in dark suits, and when she'd confronted Kael that evening, his response had been maddeningly calm. "You're my wife now. That makes you a target. I'm my own person. That makes me someone you should consult before making decisions about my life." Their first major fight had been volcanic. Her rage at being treated like property, his inability to understand why she wouldn't simply accept protection. It ended with shattered wine glasses, shouted words in English and Korean, and eventually desperate kisses against the wall of their bedroom. That became their pattern. Conflict would ignite between Kael's need to control and Ariya's need for freedom, and somehow, impossibly, the fire would transform into passion. Their intimacy wasn't just physical. It was the only language where they could truly communicate. In those moments, when vulnerability replaced armor, they understood each other perfectly. Kael started calling her Ne Sarung, my love, in his softest moments. She nicknamed him My Storm because he was both beautiful and dangerous, impossible to contain. But secrets lingered in the shadows of their marriage. Kael received encrypted calls he wouldn't explain, disappearing for hours with only Min-jae, his childhood friend and second-in-command, knowing where he'd gone. Min-jae was the only person who knew all of Kael's truths, the only one who'd been there the night his father died. Their bond was brotherhood forged in trauma, and Ariya knew better than to feel threatened by it. She had her own secrets, too. Unopened letters kept arriving from an unknown sender, forwarded from her old New York address. She'd shove them in a drawer, unwilling to let the past intrude on her present. What neither of them realized was that the past was already catching up, wearing a charming smile and carrying 15 years of vengeance in his heart. The foundations they'd built, fragile and strong in equal measure, were about to be tested in ways they couldn't imagine. But for 6 months, they'd existed in their beautiful, complicated bubble, learning each other's rhythms, building something that felt like love wrapped in lightning. Until the night the message arrived. Until doubt crept in like poison. Until everything changed. The Shilla Hotel's grand ballroom glittered like a jewel box, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across Seoul's most powerful elite. Ariya moved through the crowd in a custom emerald gown that hugged every curve before flowing into a dramatic train, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo that showcased the diamond earrings Kael had given her that morning. She felt like royalty and a trophy in equal measure, a feeling she still hadn't reconciled after 6 months as Mrs. Kael Joon-Soo. Beside her, Kael was devastatingly handsome in a black Tom Ford suit, his presence commanding attention without effort. They were the power couple everyone watched, the feared Mafia heir and his stunning black bride, a union that had scandalized and fascinated Seoul's elite in equal measure. "You're staring at everyone like they're threats," Ariya murmured, her smile fixed for the cameras. "They are," Kael replied smoothly, his hand possessive at the small of her back. "Every single one of them." She was about to respond when a voice interrupted, smooth as expensive whiskey. "Excuse me, Mrs. Joon-Soo. I'm a tremendous admirer of your work." Ariya turned to find a man in his late 30s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of face that belonged in luxury watch advertisements. His smile was disarming, genuine, and his eyes held an intelligence that immediately commanded respect. "Lucien Park," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "I work in international investments, but my real passion is interior design. I saw the feature on your Seoul penthouse project in Architectural Digest. Stunning work." "Thank you," Ariya said, accepting his handshake. His grip was firm, but not aggressive, professional. "That's very kind." She felt Kael stiffen beside her, his hand tightening at her waist. When she glanced at him, his expression was carefully neutral, but she recognized the storm brewing behind his eyes. Lucien Park, Kael said, his voice cooler than the champagne circulating on silver trays. I don't believe we've met. No, but I know of you, of course. Everyone in Seoul does. Lucien's smile never wavered, but something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or challenge. I actually have a mutual connection with your wife. David Chun? He's a friend who worked with Mrs. Joon-Soo in New York before she moved here. David's a great architect, Ariya confirmed, relaxing slightly. A mutual professional connection made sense. How do you know him? We were at Columbia together years ago. He mentioned you'd relocated to Seoul. I've been meaning to reach out about a project I'm developing in Gangnam, a luxury residential complex that could use your aesthetic touch. They talked for several minutes about design philosophy and the project details, and Ariya found herself enjoying the conversation. Lucien was knowledgeable, asked intelligent questions, and seemed genuinely interested in her perspective. It was refreshing to be seen as a professional rather than just Kael's wife. But throughout the exchange, she felt Kael's tension radiating like heat. His responses were clipped, his body language screaming territorial aggression. Finally, Lucien seemed to sense the atmosphere. I should let you both enjoy the evening. Mrs. Joon-Soo, I'll have my assistant send over the project details if you're interested. That will be lovely, Ariya said. As Lucien walked away, he paused, turning back with an expression of sympathy. It must be difficult sometimes, being married to Seoul's most feared man. All that intensity, that control. His eyes held hers for a beat too long. Do you ever feel truly seen? For who you are, not just who you are to him. Before Ariya could respond, Kael stepped forward, his voice deadly quiet. My wife is none of your concern. Lucien raised his hands in mock surrender, smile still in place. Of course. Forgive me. Enjoy your evening. The ride home was silent, tension thick enough to cut. Ariya stared out the window at Seoul's neon-soaked streets, anger building with each block. In a penthouse elevator, she finally exploded. What the hell was that? That, Kael said coldly, was a threat disguised as charm. That was a professional contact offer me work. Something I've been trying to build here while you... She stopped herself, but not quickly enough. While I what? His voice was dangerously soft. While you treat me like property. The words burst out, months of frustration erupting. You stood there radiating aggression, like I'm some possession someone might steal. I'm a person, Kael. A professional. I don't need you marking territory every time someone speaks to me. His jaw clenched, eyes flashing. I treat you like something precious that everyone wants to steal. Because that's exactly what you are. You think that man's interest was purely professional? You're that naive. I'm not naive. I'm tired of being suffocated. They stood in their bedroom, both breathing hard, the space between them crackling with anger and something darker, more primal. Kael's hands curled into fists at his sides, and Ariya saw him fighting for control. Control, always that iron grip on everything, including her. I can't lose you, he said finally, voice raw. I won't. Then stop holding so tight, I can't breathe. Something broke between them. Kael crossed the distance in 2 strides, his hands cupping her face with desperate intensity. Ariya! Their lips crashed together, anger transforming into desperate need. This was their language, the only place where walls came down. His hands found the zipper of her gown, sliding it down with practiced ease while she tore at his suit jacket, both of them frantic to shed the barriers between skin and truth. He lifted her, as she wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her to their bed. The city lights painted patterns across the ceiling, across their bodies as he laid her down with surprising gentleness given the violence of their kiss. I need you, he breathed against her throat, his hands everywhere at once. Tell me you're mine. I'm yours, she gasped as his mouth found her collarbone, trailing fire down her chest. But Kael, you have to be mine too. Completely. No more walls. He pulled back, his dark eyes searching hers with such vulnerability it stole her breath. His hands trembled slightly as they traced her sides, her hips, learning her body for the 1,000th time like it was the first. It's so overwhelming, she whispered, caught between desire and the emotional intensity of the moment. Kael, please, be gentle with me. Not just my body. My heart, too. His expression shattered into something raw and unguarded. I will always be gentle with you, Ariya, in every way. I promise. He kissed her then with such tenderness it brought tears to her eyes, his body covering hers with controlled strength that somehow conveyed both power and protection. They moved together in the moonlight, their bodies speaking what words couldn't. Apologies and promises, fear and devotion. His touch was reverent despite the desperation, mapping every curve and valley of her like he was memorizing scripture. She arched beneath him, fingers digging into his shoulders as pleasure built and crashed, until they were both gasping, hearts thundering in synchronization. Afterward, wrapped in silk sheets with city lights dancing across the ceiling, Kael held her close, his lips against her temple. I'm terrified of losing you, he confessed into the darkness, his voice barely audible. Every day I'm terrified. She turned his arms, fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Then let me in completely. Trust me. Let me be your partner, not your possession. I'm trying, he whispered. God, Ariya, I'm trying. Morning came too soon, soft light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Kael dressed for an early meeting, kissing her forehead before leaving. I'll be back by lunch. We'll talk more then. Ariya dozed, cocooned in sheets that smelled like him, feeling cautiously hopeful. Maybe last night had been a breakthrough. Maybe they were finally learning to navigate this together. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, probably Chioma checking in. But when she picked it up, her blood turned to ice. Unknown sender. Email with attachments. The subject line read, "Does your husband know who you really spend your time with?" With shaking fingers, she opened it. 3 photos loaded, professional quality, clearly taken at last night's gala. The first showed her and Lucien in conversation, but the angle made it look intimate, conspiratorial. The second captured a moment when Lucien had touched her elbow while speaking, innocent in context, damning in the frame. The third was the worst, shot from behind Kael, showing him turn away while she and Lucien appear to be sharing a private moment, her smile warm, his body language subtly possessive. The timestamps had been manipulated. The angles were deliberately misleading. Someone had weaponized ordinary moments into evidence of betrayal. Her phone buzzed again. Another email, different sender. Thought you should know. These were sent to all of your husband's business partners 10 minutes ago. Soul's about to get very interesting for you, Mrs. Joon-Soo. Ariya's hands trembled as the full horror sank in. This wasn't random. Someone was orchestrating this, had planned it meticulously. But who? And why? A third email arrived, this one with a video file. Against her better judgment, she opened it. Security footage from the gala, edited to show a narrative that didn't exist. Her seeking out Lucien, their conversation lasting longer than it had, body language manipulated through selective editing to suggest attraction, conspiracy, betrayal. Her phone rang. Kael, come home. His voice was ice. Now. The line went dead, and Ariya knew everything she'd feared, everything she'd fought against, was about to come crashing down. Someone had just declared war on her marriage, using her own image as the weapon. And she had no idea who the enemy was. Kael returned home early, the doors slamming with enough force to rattle the penthouse windows. Ariya was in the guest room. Their bedroom felt too intimate for the conversation about to happen, sitting on the edge of the bed with her phone clutched in trembling hands. He appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, his expression carved from ice. But beneath the ice, she saw the fire, rage and hurt and betrayal all fighting for dominance. Explain this to me. His voice was terrifyingly calm as he held up the screen. The photos glowed accusingly. Her and Lucien, angles suggesting intimacy that had never existed. I don't know how. Ariya's voice cracked. She stood, needing to face him at eye level. Kael, we barely spoke. Maybe 10 minutes total. Someone manipulated these, edited the angles to make it look like something it wasn't. Did you give him your number? Each word was precisely enunciated, lawyer sharp. No. I said I'd consider the project, if he sent details through proper channels. That's all. I swear on everything. That's all. His control slipped, voice rising. My associates received these photos an hour ago. Ariya, do you understand what that means? They're questioning whether I can lead when I can't even. He stopped himself, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. Can't even control your wife? She finished, anger flaring through her fear. That's what you were going to say, wasn't it? Like I'm some possession that needs managing. Min-jae shifted uncomfortably near the door. She hadn't even noticed him there. Perhaps I should. Stay, Kael commanded without looking at him. Then to Ariya, his eyes boring into hers. Someone is setting us up. Someone wants my organization to see weakness, to question my leadership. Then why are you treating me like I'm guilty? Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. I'm your wife, Kael. The woman you promised to trust. Don't you know me at all? His expression flickered. She saw the war raging behind those dark eyes. Years of trauma from his mother's affair fighting against 6 months of knowing Ariya, of building something real. I want to believe you. The words landed like a slap. Want to? Her voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Either you trust me or you don't. Either you believe in us or you believe in these manufactured lies. There's no middle ground here. The tension stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight, ready to snap. Min-jae quietly excused himself, and the click of the door closing left them alone with their demons. Over the next 3 days, those demons multiplied. Text messages appeared, allegedly from Ariya's number to an unknown contact they assumed was Lucien. The messages were intimate, conspiratorial. Can't wait to see you again. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. You understand me in ways he never has. Ariya stared at the screenshots on Kael's phone, horror crawling up her spine. I never wrote these. Check my phone. These messages aren't there. Someone spoofed your number, Min-jae said quietly. He'd been investigating, and the genuine concern in his eyes told Ariya he believed her. This is sophisticated work. Professional-grade hacking. Someone's orchestrating this very carefully. But the damage was spreading like poison through water. Members of Kael's organization began questioning his leadership openly. She overheard phone calls, Kael's voice tight with barely controlled fury as he defended himself. Once, she heard someone on speakerphone say, "A man who can't even control his own wife has no business leading this organization." The words made her sick. But what made her sicker was watching Kael internalize them. He became withdrawn, colder than the man she'd fallen in love with. Where once he'd consulted her, now he made decisions unilaterally. Where once he'd been possessive but loving, now he was controlling and distant. Guards appeared outside their penthouse. Not for her protection, she realized with growing dread, but to monitor her movements. The penthouse began to feel like a cage. Her worst fears about their marriage were manifesting like prophecy fulfilled. "You're having me followed," she confronted him one evening, finding him in his office nursing whiskey at 3 p.m. "I'm keeping you safe," he replied without looking up. "You're keeping tabs on me. There's a difference." "Is there?" His eyes finally met hers, and she barely recognized the man looking back. How am I supposed to know what's real anymore? She wanted to scream, to throw something, to shake him until the Kael she loved reappeared. Instead, she did the one thing she'd sworn she wouldn't do. She rebelled. If he was going to treat her like a prisoner, she'd act like one trying to escape. The next afternoon, she slipped away from the guards to her favorite coffee shop in Gangnam, a small place where she'd always felt anonymous and free. She needed an hour to breathe, to think, to remember who she was before becoming Mrs. Kael Joon-Soo. She was researching Lucien Park on her laptop, looking for anything that didn't add up in his too-perfect background, when he appeared. "Ariya." Lucien's voice was gentle, concerned. "I thought that was you." Her first instinct was to leave immediately, but something stopped her. Maybe defiance against Kael's control, maybe genuine need to understand what was happening, maybe just exhaustion from fighting alone. "Lucien." She closed her laptop. "This is unexpected. May I?" He gestured to the seat across from her, and she found herself nodding. He sat with the easy grace of someone comfortable in their own skin, his expression nothing but sympathetic. I heard about the rumors. The photos. I'm so sorry you're caught in this. I feel terrible. Our conversation at the gala was completely innocent, but someone twisted it into something ugly. Someone setting me up, she said, testing him, watching for any reaction. I believe you. His sincerity seemed genuine. I've been in so long enough to know how these things work. Powerful families, political games. You're caught in something bigger than you realize. The validation felt like water in a desert. Here was someone who believed her without question, who saw her as a victim rather than a perpetrator. It's destroying my marriage. I am sorry. Lucien's hand moved as if to touch hers, then retreated respectfully. Men like Kael, they see threats everywhere. It must be exhausting being married to someone so suspicious, so controlling, never knowing if he trusts you or just tolerates you until the next perceived betrayal. The words hit too close to her current reality. Ariya felt her defenses weakening, the isolation of the past days making her vulnerable to sympathy from any source. He wasn't always like this. Trauma has a way of resurfacing. Lucien's eyes held understanding. But that doesn't give him the right to imprison you. You're brilliant, talented, independent. You shouldn't have to sacrifice who you are for his peace of mind. They talked for 20 minutes, or was it 30? Time blurred as Lucien asked about her design work, her dreams, her life before Kael. He listened with genuine interest, validated her frustrations without pushing, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in days. When they finally parted, Ariya felt both comforted and guilty, though she couldn't articulate why. Nothing inappropriate had happened, just coffee and conversation. But the fact that she needed it from someone other than her husband felt like its own kind of betrayal. That evening, more emails surfaced. Explicit ones this time, allegedly from Ariya to Lucien. The language was eerily accurate to her actual thoughts, private frustrations she'd only shared with Chioma, weaponized and exposed for Kael's inner circle to see. I feel suffocated in this marriage. He treats me like property, not a partner. Sometimes I wonder what freedom would feel like. You see me as a person. He sees me as a possession to guard. The difference is everything. I'm attracted to the life you offer. Choice, autonomy, respect. Things I gave up when I said I do. Ariya stared at the printed emails Kael threw on the table between them, her hands shaking. I never wrote these. Someone hacked my conversations with Chioma. They're using my real thoughts, real words, but I never sent them to him. I barely know him. Then explain how they have your exact phrasing. Your voice. Kael's fury was ice cold now, more dangerous than heat. Explain how someone could fabricate something this specific unless you gave the material to work with. I don't know. But Kael, you have to believe. I don't know what to believe anymore. The roar exploded from him, months of control shattering. Every piece of evidence says you're lying. My advisors say you're lying. The emails, the photos, the messages, all of it points to you betraying me with him. And what does your heart say? She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. What does the man who knows me, who's loved me, who's been inside me, what does he say? The question hung between them, and she watched him war with himself. Trauma versus trust. Evidence versus faith. The scars his mother left versus the love Ariya had shown him. He looked away first. I don't know. The words broke something in her. She'd known this was possible, that his past would be too strong, that love wouldn't be enough. But hearing it confirmed felt like dying. That night, Kael came to their bedroom late, bourbon on his breath, exhaustion and desperation carved into every line of his face. She was sitting up in bed, unable to sleep, wearing one of his shirts because she needed to feel close to him even as he pushed her away. Get out, she said quietly. This is my room too. Then I'll leave. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hand catching her wrist before she could stand. Don't leave this room. Don't leave this bed. Don't leave me. The last part came out broken, vulnerable in a way she hadn't heard since the night he'd proposed. Then stop treating me like the enemy. The words exploded from her. I am not evidence to be examined. I'm your wife. I'm the woman you promised to trust, to cherish, to stand beside. I don't know what to believe anymore." His grip tightened, not painful but desperate. "Everything looks, the evidence is God. Ariya, it's destroying me. The thought of you with him, choosing him, preferring him. I'm not choosing him. I'm here. I've been here, fighting for us while you build walls and assign guards, and look at me like I'm a stranger." They stood there, breathing hard, the space between them crackling with hurt and anger and desperate, aching need. Then Kael pulled her against him roughly, his mouth crashing onto hers with bruising intensity. This wasn't their usual passion. This was war and survival, both of them fighting to reconnect through the only language that still worked when words failed. He pushed her back onto the bed, his body covering hers with familiar weight but unfamiliar desperation. His hands were urgent, almost rough, not trying to hurt her, but needing to claim her, to prove she was still his even as everything told him she wasn't. "Tell me you're mine," he demanded against her throat, his voice ragged. "I've always been yours," she gasped, but there was anger bleeding through the desire. "But you have to be mine too. You have to choose to believe me, to trust me, even when everything else says not to. It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Either you love me or you don't. Either you trust me or you don't. There's no middle ground in this, Kael. You can't half-love someone." Something cracked in his expression. He kissed her again, desperate and seeking, his hands pulling at her clothes. His shirt she wore, the thin panties beneath. She tore at his clothes with equal urgency. Both of them frantic to shed barriers, to find connection where communication had broken down. When he entered her, it was hard and fast, and edged with anger from both sides. She met his intensity with her own, her nails raking down his back, her hips rising to meet his punishing rhythm. This was hurt made physical, fear transformed into friction, love expressed through bruising kisses and gasping breaths. "I hate this," she sobbed against his shoulder. "I hate that you doubt me. I hate that someone's winning by making you not trust me. I hate it too," he groaned, his pace never slowing. "I hate that I can't just believe you. I hate that my past ruins my present. I hate that I'm failing you." "Then stop failing me," she demanded, her body arching as pleasure built despite the emotional pain. "Choose me. Choose us. Choose to believe that what we have is stronger than fabricated evidence." His rhythm faltered, then changed, still deep, still intense, but slower, more deliberate. One hand slid up to cup her face with unexpected tenderness, his thumb brushing away tears she hadn't realized she was crying. "I'm trying," he whispered, and the vulnerability in his voice unmade her. "God, Ariya, I'm trying so hard." The orgasm that crashed through her was equal parts pleasure and release, physical and emotional, body and soul crying out for connection. He followed moments later, her name a broken prayer on his lips as he collapsed against her. They lay tangled together in the aftermath, both breathing hard, the air thick with unspoken things. Kael's weight pressed her into the mattress, grounding and suffocating in equal measure. When he finally rolled to the side, he pulled her with him, refusing to break contact even as sweat cooled on their skin. "I need to tell you something," he said into the darkness, his voice hollow and distant. "Something I've never told anyone except Minjae." Ariya went still, sensing the weight of what was coming. "My mother had an affair when I was 15. The words came slowly, painfully, like shards of glass being extracted from an old wound. "With my father's business partner, a man he trusted like a brother. My father found out, and he lost his mind." Kael's hand found hers in the darkness, gripping tight enough to hurt. "He killed her lover, shot him right in front of me, in our living room. I can still see the blood on the white carpet, spreading like ink in water. Then he turned the gun on himself." His voice cracked. "I watched them both die. 15 years old, and I watched the two people who were supposed to protect me destroy each other over betrayal." Ariya turned in his arms, horror and understanding flooding through her. She cupped his face, feeling wetness on his cheeks, tears he'd probably never shed for anyone else. "The affair destroyed everything," he continued. Our family, my father's empire, everything. Because he loved her more than anything, and her betrayal broke something fundamental in him. He couldn't survive it. Kael's eyes met hers in the moonlight. So yes, I know I'm controlling. I know I'm suspicious. I know I see threats everywhere. But I watched what betrayal does. I saw how love can turn to murder in the space of a heartbeat. And his voice broke completely. I can't survive losing you like that. I won't. Oh, Kael. Ariya pulled him close, and he buried his face in her neck, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I'm not your mother. And you're not your father. We're not them. We're us. How do I know? The question was anguished, muffled against her skin. How do I know what's real when everything looks like history repeating? Because I'm telling you. Because I've never lied to you. Never given you reason to doubt me. Because I'm here, fighting for us instead of running away from your impossible demands and your trauma and your world that's trying to eat me alive. She tilted his face up, forcing him to meet her eyes. That has to count for something. He kissed her then, soft and desperate, tasting of salt and bourbon and regret. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for doubting you. I know. She kissed him back, gentler now, healing rather than claiming. But Kael, you have to work through this. You have to find a way to trust me even when it's hard. Because if you can't. His phone buzzed. Then again, and again, the sound cutting through their fragile reconnection like a knife. Kael reached for it automatically, and she watched his face go white in the blue screen glow. What? She whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. Wordlessly, he turned the screen toward her. Security footage, timestamped from earlier that day, showing her entering the Four Seasons Hotel, where, according to the accompanying message, Lucien Park maintained a permanent suite. I was never at the Four Seasons, she said desperately, sitting up. Kael, I swear on everything. I went to the coffee shop in Gangnam. That's all. Someone doctored this footage, but she saw it happening in real time. The walls slamming back up, the trust crumbling, 16-year-old trauma overwhelming 30-year-old logic. The fear in his eyes transformed back into cold suspicion. Get out, he said quietly, his voice dead. Kael. Now. His roar shattered the fragile reconnection they'd built. Get out of this room. Min-jae will take you to the guest room. We'll figure this out tomorrow. But I can't. I can't look at you right now. Ariya fled, tears blinding her, her body still warm from their lovemaking, her heart breaking into pieces she wasn't sure could be repaired. She heard him behind her. A crash, something thrown against a wall, a roar of anguish that sounded like a wounded animal. In the guest room, she curled into herself on the cold bed and finally let herself sob. Everything she'd feared from the beginning was coming true. Love wasn't enough. Trust wasn't enough. His past was too strong, and someone was using it to destroy them with surgical precision. And the worst part? She didn't know how to fight an enemy she couldn't see, using weapons she couldn't defend against, exploiting wounds she couldn't heal. All she knew was that she was losing him, and she had no idea how to win him back. The headlines hit like bombs at dawn. Mafia heir's wife in adultery scandal. Kael Joon-Soo's American bride caught with French businessman. Power couple crumbles. Exclusive photos inside the betrayal. Ariya watched from the guest room as news vans assembled outside their building like vultures circling carrion. Her phone had been ringing non-stop since 6 a.m. Clients, colleagues, even people she barely knew, all calling to either condemn or extract gossip. By 9 a.m., 3 of her biggest design contracts had been canceled via terse emails. By noon, her professional reputation lay in ruins across every Korean news outlet and social media platform. The photos were everywhere, the manipulated images from the gala, the fabricated hotel footage, screenshots of those explicit emails she'd never written. Anonymous sources provided commentary about her character, her ambitions, her supposed dissatisfaction with married life. The narrative was perfectly constructed. Ambitious American woman marries into Korean mafia for status, grows bored, seeks excitement elsewhere. Seoul's elite, who'd been fascinated by their interracial union 6 months ago, now tore her apart with gleeful cruelty. Social media exploded with racist commentary, slut-shaming, conspiracy theories. Someone created a hashtag that translated roughly to #BlackWidowSeoul. Through the walls, she could hear Kael on the phone, his voice rising and falling as his business partners demanded emergency meetings. She caught fragments. Question of leadership. Can't maintain order in his own house. Respectfully suggests stepping down. His empire was cracking, and it was her face they were using as the wrecking ball. Min-jae appeared at her door around 2 p.m., his expression unreadable. You should stay in here. Photographers have telephoto lenses. Where's Kael? Handling it. But the tightness around Min-jae's eyes suggested it wasn't going well. Does he still think I don't know what he thinks anymore. Min-jae's tone softened. For what it's worth, this whole thing stinks. It's too perfect, too coordinated. Someone's conducting an orchestra here. After he left, Ariya sat alone in the guest room that felt more like a cell, questioning everything. 6 months ago, she'd been independent, successful, content. Now she was a scandal, a liability, potentially the cause of a mafia war. Maybe Chioma had been right. Maybe this marriage had been a mistake from the start. Her phone buzzed. Chioma, the only call she'd answered all day. I can't get past security, her friend said without preamble. They're screening everyone. Girl, tell me you're okay. I'm not. Ariya's voice broke. I'm so not okay. What can I do? Find out who Lucien Park really is. There has to be something, some connection we're missing. After they hung up, Ariya stared at her laptop. She'd been over the evidence 100 times, but now she looked with different eyes. Not as a victim trying to prove innocence, but as a designer trained to notice details others missed. She opened the photo files, examined the metadata. Her breath caught. The timestamps had been altered. The EXIF data showed editing software, professional grade, not amateur phone apps. Someone with significant technical skill and expensive tools had manipulated these images. She cross-referenced the hotel footage and found similar inconsistencies, frame rates that didn't match standard security cameras, lighting angles that defied the hotel's actual setup. This wasn't opportunistic scandal. This was premeditated warfare. She pulled up every piece of evidence. Photos, emails, messages, footage. A pattern emerged. Every single piece tied back to moments when Lucien Park had been physically present or nearby. The gala, the coffee shop, even the hotel timestamp corresponded to when she'd been at a design consultation 3 blocks away. Close enough for GPS spoofing. Lucien wasn't just involved. He was the architect. Ariya's hands shook as she typed his name into search engines, digging deeper than before. Lucien Park, Columbia University, international investments. Perfect background. Too perfect. She tried variations. Lucien Park, Lucien Pak. Then, on instinct, Lucien Ri. The results that appeared made her blood run cold. 15-year-old newspaper articles in Korean, which she ran through translation software. Ri family empire collapses in gang war. Business partner's betrayal leads to bloodbath. Ri patriarch dies in prison. Family flees Korea. And there, in a grainy photo from 2010, a teenage boy being escorted by French authorities, identified as Lucien Ri, son of the disgraced businessman. His father had been Kael's father's partner until betrayal sparked a war that left the Ri family destroyed and Kael's father victorious, but ultimately murdered by other enemies sensing weakness. Lucien hadn't returned for love or business. He'd returned for revenge. This wasn't about her at all. She was just the weapon he'd chosen to destroy Kael's life the way Kael's father had destroyed his. Ariya grabbed her laptop and burst from the guest room. She found Kael in his office, Min-jae beside him, both men looking haggard. They stopped talking when she entered. I know who's behind this. She set the laptop on his desk, hands trembling. His name is Lucien Ri. Your father destroyed his family 15 years ago. Kael stared at the screen, something flickering in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or memory. Ri's son. He's been planning this for years. Everything, the photos, the emails, all of it, is fabricated. Look at the metadata. Look at the pattern. Words tumbled out desperately. Kael, I'm not crazy. I'm not guilty. I'm collateral damage in his vendetta against you. Min-jae leaned over, examining the evidence. His expression shifted. She's right. This is professional-grade manipulation. And if he's Ri's son, he looked at Kael meaningfully. This goes way deeper than adultery rumors. Kael's hands were shaking. Actually shaking. He looked at Ariya, and she saw the war in his eyes. Trauma fighting love. Suspicion battling faith. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, Ariya, I'm so sorry. She crossed to him, knelt beside his chair, took his face in her hands. Look at me. Really look at me. Have I ever lied to you? No. Have I ever given you real reason not to trust me? No. Then believe me now. Believe in us. Because we're about to fight for our lives, and I need you to know I'm on your side. I've always been on your side. Something broke in him. He pulled her up into his lap, buried his face in her neck. His shoulders shook with silent sobs, the first time she'd ever seen him cry. I failed you. I let my past destroy our present. I'm so sorry. We both failed, she whispered, holding him tight. But we're not done yet. That night, they made love in his office with the city lights bleeding through the windows, and it was different from every time before. Slow and healing, every touch an apology, every kiss a promise. Kael's hands trembled as they traced her body, reverent and seeking forgiveness. I love you, he breathed against her skin. I love you, and I'm sorry I forgot how to show it. I love you too, she gasped as they moved together, finding rhythm again after days of discord. We're going to survive this. Together. Afterward, wrapped in each other, they planned. Lucien thought he'd won, but he'd made a mistake. He'd underestimated them both. We used the scandal as cover, Kael said, already thinking strategically. I'll publicly move out. We stage a separation. While everyone watches that drama, we investigate. Min-jae can dig into Lucien's finances, his connections. I can play the abandoned wife, Ariya added. Get close to him. Make him think he's succeeded in driving us apart. It's dangerous. Everything about loving you is dangerous. She kissed him. I'm not afraid. They worked through the night, building strategy. By dawn, they had a plan. Kael would appear broken, weakened. Ariya would play the victim, turning to Lucien for comfort. And while Seoul's elite watched the melodrama, they would systematically dismantle Lucien's revenge plot. But as Min-jae dug deeper into Lucien's activities, a darker picture emerged. This wasn't just about reputation. Lucien had been embezzling from Kael's organization for months, using shell companies and false contracts. He'd been systematically bribing Kael's business partners, turning them against each other, positioning pieces for a hostile takeover. He wants everything, Min-jae said grimly. Your organization, your money, your reputation. He wants to take your entire life the way your father took his father's. Kael stared at the evidence, jaw tight. Then we take everything back, and we make sure he never threatens anyone again. The next morning, the announcement went public. Kael Joon-Soo and Ariya David were separating. The media exploded with speculation and vindication. Seoul's elite nodded knowingly. Of course the marriage couldn't survive such betrayal. No one suspected it was the opening move in a much longer game. As Ariya packed her bags in front of Kael for the cameras undoubtedly watching, she whispered, I'll see you on the other side of this. I'll find you, he promised quietly. Always. The apartment Ariya moved into was small, sterile, nothing like the penthouse that had been her home. Chioma had arranged it under a false name, and theoretically, it was safe. But as Ariya unpacked her single suitcase, she'd never felt more exposed. The media frenzy intensified. Every news cycle brought fresh speculation about the separation. Paparazzi camped outside her building. Her mother called from Atlanta, voice tight with worry and I told you so's she was gracious enough not to voice. Former colleagues sent carefully worded messages that basically asked if she was okay, while making it clear they couldn't associate with her professionally. Seoul had decided she was the villain, and there was no appeal from that verdict. Worse was the silence from Kael. For her safety, they'd agreed to minimal contact, only through Chioma's encrypted phone, and only when absolutely necessary. The distance felt like death. On her third day alone, Lucien called. Ariya, I heard about the separation. I'm so sorry. His voice dripped sympathy. I feel somewhat responsible. If I hadn't approached you at the gala. It's not your fault, she forced herself to say, playing the role. Kael and we had problems long before that night. Would you like to talk? I'm at a cafe in Itaewon. No pressure. Just, you shouldn't be alone right now. Every instinct screamed danger, but this was the plan. Get close. Gain his trust. Gather evidence. Okay, she said softly. Text me the address. Lucien was waiting at a corner table when she arrived, and his concern appeared genuine. He stood when she approached, pulled out her chair, ordered her favorite tea without asking. Small gestures that showed he'd been paying attention, studying her. How are you holding up, he asked. I'm not. The truth was easier than lying. Everything I built here is gone. My marriage, My career, my reputation. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're exactly who you've always been, Lucien said gently. A brilliant, independent woman who made the mistake of loving a man who needed to own rather than cherish you. The words were poison disguised as comfort. Ariya let them land. Let him see her absorb them. Let him think they were working. Over the next 2 weeks, Lucien became a constant presence. He'd call to check on her, show up with food when he worried she wasn't eating, offer advice about restarting her career. And slowly, carefully, he revealed more of his plans, always framed as concern for her future. Kael's organization is crumbling, he mentioned one afternoon. I've heard rumors of financial irregularities. The authorities are investigating. Ariya's blood went cold, but she kept her expression neutral. What kind of irregularities? Money laundering, illegal weapons trades, things that could put him in prison for decades. Lucien's eyes held hers. Things you should be grateful you're no longer associated with. The fabricated evidence. He was moving to his endgame. That night, using Chioma's burner phone, she managed a brief call to Kael. He's planning something big, she whispered. Financial crimes, weapons charges. Kael, you need to be careful. I know. His voice was strained. The warrant was issued yesterday. I'm underground with Minjae. Her heart stopped. What? Where are you? Can't say. It's safer if you don't know. A pause. Ariya, this might get worse before it gets better. There's a bounty. Rival organizations see me as weak, vulnerable. They're moving in. Then come back. We'll figure something else out. If I surface now, I'll be arrested before I can expose Lucien. This is the only way. His voice cracked slightly. I love you. Stay strong, Ne Sarung. The line went dead. Ariya sat in her dark apartment, terror clawing at her chest. Kael was being hunted by both law enforcement and criminal rivals. One wrong move, and he was dead or imprisoned. And she was here, playing house with his enemy. The next day, Lucien invited her to dinner at his hotel suite. The Four Seasons, of course. More private than a restaurant. I thought you'd appreciate avoiding the cameras. Every nerve screamed danger, but she went. This might be her only chance to get concrete evidence. The suite was obscenely luxurious. Lucien had ordered room service, French cuisine, expensive wine. He was the perfect host, attentive and charming. Over dinner, he talked about Paris, about opportunities there, about how she could rebuild her career in Europe where the scandal wouldn't follow. Come with me, he said finally, refilling her wine. Leave this mess behind. You deserve better than this life, hiding in a tiny apartment, destroyed by association with a criminal. I can offer you freedom, Ariya. A fresh start. That's very generous, she managed. But I can't just. Can't what? Run away from a marriage that's already over. His hand covered hers on the table. Kael is finished. Even if he avoids prison, his organization is done. He has nothing left to offer you. But his eyes held hers, intense. I can give you everything. Ariya's stomach churned. She gently extracted her hand. I need time to think. Of course. But frustration flickered across his face, quickly masked. I apologize. I'm moving too fast. It's just, I've admired you for so long. Watching him control you, dim your light, it was painful. Red flags everywhere, but she smiled weakly. Thank you for understanding. As the evening progressed, Lucien drank more wine, grew more candid. Ariya encouraged it subtly, pretending to drink while staying sharp. Kael will lose everything, he said, staring into his glass. His empire, his reputation, his freedom. Everything his father took from mine. He looked up at her. Including you. There it was, the admission of vendetta. Ariya's heart pounded, but she kept her expression sympathetic. Your father? Kael's father destroyed my family. Took everything. My father died in prison, disgraced. We lost our home, our name, our lives. Bitterness poisoned every word. I swore I'd return the favor. And I have. She needed him to say more, needed concrete details for the recording she had going on the phone hidden in her purse. But before she could prompt him further, he stood abruptly. You're so beautiful, he murmured, approaching her chair. So wasted on him. Ariya stood quickly. I should go. His hand caught her wrist. Stay. Please. You don't have to be alone anymore. Lucien. He pulled her closer, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. This wasn't romance. This was conquest. He wanted to claim Kael's wife as the final humiliation. "I think about you constantly," he whispered. "Let me show you how you should be treated." He leaned in to kiss her, and Ariya turned her head at the last second, his lips landing on her cheek. "I'm not ready," she said, forcing regret into her voice. "It's too soon. Please understand." For a moment, his grip tightened painfully. Then he released her, stepping back with obvious effort. "Of course. Forgive me." The wine. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Let me call you a car." Ariya left shaking, the recording in her purse, knowing she'd barely escaped something dark. Meanwhile, across the city, Kael huddled in a decrepit safe house with Min-jae, who'd been shot protecting him 3 days ago. Min-jae's wound was bandaged, but not properly treated. Hospitals meant questions they couldn't answer. "You should go to her," Min-jae said through gritted teeth. "Ariya, stop this pretense. You're dying here. If I go to her, I lead them right to her. The police, the rivals, everyone's watching her, hoping I'll surface." Kael's hands clenched into fists. "She's safer if I stay away." But was she? Doubt gnawed at him. What if Lucien was more than just an architect of scandal? What if he was dangerous in other ways? That night, Ariya sent a coded message. "Tomorrow, it ends." Kael stared at his burner phone, terror and pride warring in his chest. His brilliant, courageous wife was about to do something impossibly brave and probably reckless. He typed back, "Trust me, I'll be there when you need me." But alone in that dark safe house, with Min-jae's shallow breathing beside him and enemies closing in from all sides, Kael wondered if that promise was one he could actually keep. The restaurant Lucien chose was predictably exclusive, a private dining room at Mingle's, one of Seoul's most prestigious establishments. Ariya arrived in a simple black dress, looking every bit the defeated woman the public believed her to be. Her hands trembled genuinely as she was escorted through the main dining room, aware of the whispers, the stares, the judgment following her like a shadow. What no one could see was the wire taped beneath her collarbone, transmitting every word to Chioma's laptop 3 blocks away, or the micro camera in her pendant necklace, recording everything, or the fact that Kael and Min-jae, recovered enough to move, were positioned in an unmarked van outside with authorities who'd finally listened to Min-jae's evidence about the fabricated charges. Everything depended on Lucien's ego, on him believing he'd won completely enough to confess. Lucien stood when she entered the private room, his smile warm and welcoming. "Ariya, you look beautiful, despite everything." "I look exhausted," she corrected, sitting across from him. "I haven't slept properly in weeks." "That will change soon." He poured wine, something French and expensive. "I've arranged everything for Paris. We leave in 3 days. You'll love the apartment I've selected, overlooking the Seine, perfect light for a design studio." Ariya's stomach churned, but she forced herself to nod. "You've been so kind through all of this. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have survived. You're stronger than you know." His eyes held hers. "Stronger than Kael ever gave you credit for. Can I ask you something?" She kept her voice soft, vulnerable. "Why me? Why have you been so invested in helping me?" Lucien was silent for a moment, swirling wine in his glass. When he looked up, something had shifted in his expression, a mask sliding away to reveal calculation beneath. "Because I understand what it's like to have everything stolen by the Joon-Soo family." There it was. The opening. "What do you mean?" Ariya leaned forward, all concerned sympathy. "Your husband's father destroyed mine. 15 years ago." Bitterness dripped from every word. They were partners, brothers, practically, built an empire together. Then Kael's father decided he didn't want to share anymore. He fabricated evidence of betrayal, turned everyone against my father, took everything we had. "That's terrible," Ariya whispered. "You must have suffered so much." The sympathy seemed to unlock something in him. Perhaps it was the wine, or the belief that he'd won, or simply the human need to be understood for the monster you've become. "I was 16 when my father went to prison. 16 when we lost our home, our name, our lives. My mother died of grief within a year. I was shipped off to France to live with distant relatives who barely tolerated me. His hand clenched around the wine glass. I swore I'd return the favor. I'd take everything from the Joon-Soo family the way they took everything from mine. So you came back, Ariya prompted gently. I spent 15 years planning this. Every detail, every document, every photograph. Pride entered his voice, the pride of an artist describing their masterpiece. I studied you both for months before approaching. I knew exactly how to exploit the cracks in your marriage. Kael's control issues, your desire for independence. Perfect. The photos at the gala. Hired the photographer weeks in advance. Gave him exact angles I needed. The timestamps, the metadata, all manipulated by hackers. I paid very well. He smiled, enjoying the confession. The text messages were simple, spoofing technology. The emails required more finesse. I needed language that matched your actual thoughts, so I had someone hack your conversations with your friend Chioma. Ariya's blood ran cold, but she kept her expression sympathetic. You thought of everything. I had to. This wasn't just about destroying Kael's marriage. That was just the beginning. Lucien leaned forward, animated now. I've been embezzling from his organization for 8 months. Shell companies, false contracts, bribing his business partners. While everyone watched your marriage implode, I systematically dismantled his empire. The police investigation. Fabricated evidence, of course. Money laundering, illegal weapons trades. All planted. I have connections in law enforcement who were happy to help for the right price. He laughed, actually laughed. The beauty is, nobody will believe him. He's already a criminal in their eyes. The evidence is too perfect. But what about his allies? His organization? I allied myself with rival families. The Kims, the Choice, everyone who's wanted to take down the Joon-Soo empire for years. I gave them the perfect opportunity. His eyes glittered with triumph. By the time this is over, Kael will have nothing. No organization, no reputation, no freedom. And no you. There it was, the full confession, every detail, every crime. Ariya felt the weight of it, the magnitude of his obsession and cruelty. And what about me? She asked quietly. Was I just a tool? Lucien's expression softened into something almost resembling affection. You were the perfect weapon. He loves you, genuinely loves you, which is rare in our world. That made him weak, made him vulnerable. But you, he reached across the table, taking her hand. You're extraordinary, beautiful, intelligent, talented. You deserve so much more than being some criminal's possession. So you destroyed my life to save me? The irony was bitter. I freed you, he corrected. From him, from that world. Now you can come with me, start fresh. We can build something together, something real, not based on violence and control. Ariya looked at their joined hands, at this man who'd methodically destroyed everything she loved and called it liberation. She thought of Kael, hiding in the shadows, hunted and alone. She thought of the past weeks of isolation and fear. She thought of every couple who'd ever survived someone trying to tear them apart. And she made her choice. Her free hand moved to her necklace, touching the pendant in the prearranged signal. That's a beautiful sentiment, Lucien, she said clearly, pulling her hand away. But I have to ask, did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? His expression froze. What? Lucien Rhee, son of the man who actually betrayed Kael's father first. The man who embezzled millions before Kael's father discovered it. Funny how you left that part out of your story. The private room door burst open. Kael entered first, very much not in hiding, very much not arrested. Behind him came Min-jae, several police officers, and, crucially, 2 prosecutors and a camera crew from a major news network. Lucien stood so fast his chair toppled. What have you done? I chose my husband, Ariya said, standing to face him. And I chose truth. Everything you just confessed? Recorded. Every crime, every fabrication, every pay bribe. All of it. Kael moved to her side, his hand finding hers, united front. You forgot one thing in all your planning, Rhee. You assumed she was weak. You assumed I was alone. You assumed we couldn't survive you. You assumed wrong. Ariya finished. The senior prosecutor stepped forward. Lucien Rhee, you're under arrest for fraud, extortion, defamation, conspiracy to commit fraud, bribery of public officials. The list continued as officers moved in with handcuffs. No, you can't. This isn't. Lucien's composure shattered completely. I have allies. Powerful families backing me. But even as he said it, his phone began buzzing. Text after text from those same families. Messages all saying variations of the same thing. They were withdrawing support, denying involvement, protecting themselves now that the plot was exposed. As officers led Lucien away, he looked back at Ariya with such hatred it should have burned. You'll regret this. Both of you. This isn't over. Yes, Kael said quietly. It is. The restaurant erupted in camera flashes as news of the arrest spread. The recording of Lucien's confession was already being broadcast, his crimes exposed to the same public that had condemned Ariya weeks ago. But Ariya barely noticed. She turned into Kael's arms, feeling his heartbeat against hers, breathing him in after weeks of separation that felt like years. You came, she whispered. Always, he murmured into her hair. I'll always come for you. They stood there in the chaos, holding each other, while Seoul's elite watched and cameras captured their reunion. The redemption arc was complete, not just in public, but in private. They'd survived betrayal, scandal, and psychological warfare. They'd chosen each other over and over again, and they were still standing. Later, in their penthouse, finally home, they made love with the desperation of survivors and the tenderness of partners who'd walked through fire together. Kael's hands trembled as they traced her body. His control finally surrendered to vulnerability. I'm sorry, he breathed between kisses. For doubting you. For letting my trauma. We're past apologies, Ariya interrupted, pulling him closer. We're here now. That's what matters. Their intimacy was celebration and affirmation, passion and promise. No more power struggles, no more control issues. Just two people choosing each other, wholly and completely, scars and all. I love you, Kael whispered as they moved together. God, Ariya, I love you so much. I love you too, she gasped. My storm. My impossible, complicated, perfect storm. As Seoul's lights danced across the ceiling and their bodies found rhythm, they knew the truth. Some bonds couldn't be broken. Some love was stronger than any weapon formed against it. They'd proven that tonight. The courtroom was packed with media, spectators, and Seoul's elite who'd come to witness the conclusion of the scandal that had captivated the city for weeks. Ariya sat in the front row beside Kael, their hands clasped, as prosecutors presented the full scope of Lucien Rhee's conspiracy. The evidence was damning and comprehensive. The recording from the restaurant played first, Lucien's voice filling the courtroom as he detailed 15 years of planning, the fabricated photographs, the hacked messages, the paid bribes. The prosecutors then presented the metadata analysis, proving the photos had been manipulated, testimony from the hackers Lucien had hired, and financial records showing his embezzlement from Kael's organization. But the twist that shocked everyone came from the historical evidence. The defense claims Mr. Rhee was seeking justice for his father's wrongful persecution, the lead prosecutor stated. But the historical record tells a different story. Documents were projected on screens throughout the courtroom. Financial records from 15 years ago showing Lucien's father had been embezzling from the partnership long before Kael's father discovered it. Bank statements, witness testimony from accountants, even a partial confession found in the elder Rhee's prison correspondence. Lucien Rhee's father wasn't an innocent victim, the prosecutor continued. He was a traitor who betrayed his partner's trust, stole millions, and when discovered, attempted to frame Kael Joon-Soo's father for his own crimes. The subsequent gang war that destroyed both families was the result of mutual betrayal, not the persecution of an innocent man. Ariya watched Lucien's face as this truth emerged. The self-righteous vengeance that had sustained him for 15 years crumbled, revealing the hollowness beneath. His entire identity had been built on a lie. The verdict came swiftly, guilty on all counts. 20 years in prison, assets frozen, reputation destroyed. As officers led him away, Lucien looked back at Ariya and Kael one final time. My father's allies still exist, he said quietly. You think you've won, But this is just... Let them come, Kael interrupted, standing. His voice was calm, certain. Now we're ready. Ariya stood beside him, adding, we're stronger than you could ever imagine. Together, their united front said everything. They were no longer the fractured couple Lucien had exploited. They were forged in fire, unbreakable. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as they gave their statement. Public opinion had shifted completely. The same outlets that had vilified Ariya now praised her courage. The same social media that had destroyed her now celebrated her vindication. But the real transformation happened in private. Kael addressed his organization the next day, gathered in the conference room of their headquarters. Ariya sat beside him, not behind, not watching from the shadows, but beside him as equal partner. I learned something these past weeks, Kael began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. I learned that control is an illusion, that the harder you grip something, the easier it slips through your fingers. Real power doesn't come from dominance. It comes from trust, from partnership, from knowing when to let go. He looked at Min-jae, who stood nearby, which is why I'm promoting Min-jae to equal partner in this organization. We're restructuring, legitimizing our operations, moving away from the violence and criminality that destroyed my father and nearly destroyed me. The announcement sent ripples through the room, but no one objected. They'd all witnessed what nearly happened when the organization functioned on fear and control alone. Ariya's professional life rebuilt faster than expected. Clients who dropped her returned with apologies. New opportunities emerged. International projects, major commissions. Within a month, she launched Ariya David Designs, keeping her maiden name professionally as both declaration of independence and tribute to who she'd been before Kael. At the launch party, Kael gave a speech that surprised everyone. My wife is not my possession. She is not defined by being Mrs. Joon-Soo. She is Ariya David, brilliant designer, courageous woman, my equal partner in every sense. I'm honored that she chooses to share her life with me. Chioma, who'd been cautiously optimistic since the trial, finally pulled Ariya aside. Okay, I'll admit it. He's earned you, girl. Finally. We earned each other, Ariya corrected. Neither of us is perfect, but we're perfect for each other. The private transformation was quieter, but more profound. Kael began consulting Ariya on business decisions, genuinely seeking her perspective rather than just informing her of his choices. She learned to communicate her needs clearly rather than expecting him to read her mind. They established boundaries and respected them. But perhaps most importantly, they started couples therapy. My father's legacy was violence and control. Kael told their therapist in their third session, Ariya's hand in his. I don't want that to be mine. I want to build something different, something better. I spent so long being afraid of losing myself, Ariya added. But I'm learning that loving someone completely doesn't mean disappearing. It means finding yourself more clearly through their eyes. The healing wasn't linear. There were still arguments, still moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But now they had tools to work through them, language to express what they needed, commitment to choosing each other even when it was hard. 3 months after the trial, they visited Lucien in prison. It wasn't necessary. He'd already lost everything. But Ariya insisted. What? Lucien asked bitterly, staring at them through the glass partition. No, Ariya said quietly, to tell you that we forgive you. His eyes widened in shock. Your father hurt you through his lies, Kael continued. My father hurt you through his revenge. That cycle of hurt and retaliation, it ends here. We're not going to carry it forward. We're choosing something different, Ariya added. Love instead of vengeance. Truth instead of manipulation. Partnership instead of possession. As they left, Lucien called after them. You think you've won? My father's allies still exist. There are others who, but they didn't turn back. Whatever threats remained, they'd face them together. That night, in their penthouse, Ariya found Kael on the balcony, staring out at Seoul's glittering skyline. What are you thinking? She asked, slipping her arms around him from behind. That my father spent his life building an empire through fear and force. And I'm learning to build one through trust and partnership. He turned in her arms. Because of you. Not because of me. With me. There's a difference. He kissed her then, deep and slow, and she felt in that kiss everything they'd survived, everything they'd learned, everything they were still becoming. They made love that night with the city lights painting patterns across their skin, and it was different from every time before. There was no desperation, no need to prove anything, no walls to break down. Just two people who'd chosen each other through hell and come out stronger. Later, as they lay tangled together, Kael whispered, "Lucien thought he won, but he didn't know what we are capable of together." "No one does," Ariya replied, smiling in the darkness. "Let them all underestimate us. We know the truth." And the truth was this. They were no longer just surviving their love. They were thriving in it, building something real and lasting from the ashes of what had almost destroyed them. Outside, in the shadows of Seoul, a figure watched their building with calculating eyes. Lucien had been right about one thing. His father's allies did exist, and they were patient. But that was a story for another day. For now, Ariya and Kael had won, and that victory was sweet enough to savor. 3 months later, the penthouse bedroom was transformed by moonlight and intention. Candles flickered on every surface, casting golden shadows that danced across walls that had witnessed their darkest hours and now cradled their rebirth. The scent of jasmine and sandalwood filled the air. Her favorite and his blended together like their lives had become. Ariya stood before the full-length mirror in an ivory silk dress that flowed like water over her curves. The fabric was butter-soft against her skin, simple yet elegant, nothing like the elaborate confection from their first wedding. This time, there was no pretense, no performance for Seoul's elite. Her natural hair fell in loose curls that framed her face, and she wore only the engagement ring Kael had given her in Paris, when everything was possible and nothing was complicated. She felt his presence before she saw him in the reflection. Kael appeared behind her, devastatingly handsome in a simple black suit that emphasized his lean strength. But it was his eyes that captured her, dark and deep and full of emotion he no longer tried to hide. "You're staring," she whispered, meeting his gaze in the mirror. "I'm memorizing," he corrected, stepping closer until his chest brushed her back. His hands settled on her waist with reverent gentleness. "Every moment with you is one I want to remember forever." She leaned back against him, feeling his heart beat against her spine. "Ready to marry me again? I never stopped being married to you. Not even when everything fell apart." His lips found the curve of her neck, a feather-light kiss that sent shivers through her. "But yes, I'm ready to promise you everything, all over again." Their intimate gathering filled the living room. Only 20 people who truly stood by them. Chioma in a stunning purple dress, tears already forming. Min Jae in a matching suit to Kael's, his arms still slightly stiff from the bullet wound but healing. Ariya's mother, who'd flown from Atlanta with cautious hope that had blossomed into genuine joy. Friends who'd weathered the scandal with them, who knew the truth beneath the lies. The officiant kept it simple, but when the time came for vows, the room fell into reverent silence. Kael took both of Ariya's hands, his thumbs tracing circles on her wrists. That absent gesture of his that always meant he was feeling deeply. His voice was steady but thick with emotion. "Ariya, the first time I married you, I thought I knew what love was. I thought it was possession, protection, control. I was so afraid of losing you that I nearly destroyed us both." He paused, swallowing hard. "You taught me that real love isn't about holding tight. It's about trusting enough to let go. It's about being partners, not possessor and possession. So I promise you, I will trust your strength, not try to cage it. I will stand beside you, not in front of you. I will love every part of you. Your independence, your fire, your refusal to be anyone but exactly who you are. You saved me from my father's legacy, from my trauma, from becoming a man I would have hated. I promise to spend every day being worthy of that gift." Ariya's tears flowed freely, but her voice was strong. "Kael, I came into this marriage terrified of losing myself. I've been controlled before, suffocated before, and I swore I'd never let it happen again. But you show me that being loved completely doesn't mean disappearing. It means being seen more clearly than ever before. She squeezed his hands. I promise to trust your love, not fear it. To challenge you when you need it and stand with you always. To choose you every day, especially on the hard days. You are my storm, beautiful and dangerous and impossible to contain. And I wouldn't change a single thing about you, because everything you are is everything I need. When they kissed, it was soft and deep and full of promise. Not the beginning of something new, but the continuation of something that had been tested and proven unbreakable. The reception was joy without performance. Music played, champagne flowed, and laughter filled spaces that had been too quiet for too long. Ariya's mother pulled her aside at one point, cupping her face with motherly tenderness. I was so worried, she admitted. When you told me about him, about his world, I thought I was losing you. But baby girl, you didn't lose yourself. You found more of yourself than I've ever seen. He helped me become who I was always meant to be, Ariya said, watching Kael laugh with Min-jae across the room. We helped each other. As the evening wore on, the international recognition of Ariya's work came up repeatedly. Architectural Digest had featured her firm, and commissions were pouring in from Dubai, London, New York. Kael's transformation of his organization was equally impressive, pivoting to real estate development and tech investments, using his power and connections for legitimate enterprise. You're both building empires, Chioma observed, watching them together. But this time, they're empires worth having. Finally, mercifully, the last guest departed. Ariya kicked off her heels the moment the door closed, and Kael loosened his tie with visible relief. Alone at last, she smiled, padding barefoot toward their bedroom. He caught her hand, spinning her back into his arms. Not so fast. I've been waiting all night to have you to myself. Then what are you waiting for? Her voice dropped, teasing and inviting. Kael lifted her effortlessly, her surprised laugh transforming into a sigh as he carried her to their bedroom. The candles still flickered, casting everything in intimate gold. He set her down beside the bed with such care, as if she were something precious and breakable, which she wasn't. But his tenderness made her feel cherished anyway. I need you, he whispered, hands framing her face. Not to prove anything, not to claim anything, just because you're you, and I love every part of you more than I have words for. Then stop talking, she whispered back, pulling him down for a kiss that started gentle and built into something desperate and necessary. His hands found the zipper of her dress, sliding it down with aching slowness. The silk pooled at her feet, and he stepped back just to look at her. Really look at her, with such raw desire and love that she felt it like a physical touch. You're devastating, he breathed. You're overdressed, she countered, reaching for his jacket. They undressed each other slowly, reverently, mapping familiar territory with new appreciation. Every scar on his body told a story she now knew. The bullet wound from a rival's ambush, the knife mark from protecting Min-jae, the burn on his shoulder from the fire that killed his father. Her hands traced each one, acknowledging his survival, his strength. His hands mapped her with equal devotion, the curve of her hip, the dip of her waist, the swell of her breasts. Perfect, he murmured against her skin. Every inch of you is perfect. When he laid her back on their bed, moonlight and candlelight painting patterns across her dark skin, he paused to just look at her. I love you, Ariya. More than power, more than control, more than anything I thought mattered before you. Show me, she whispered, pulling him down. Their lovemaking was slow and intimate, communication without words. He entered her with exquisite gentleness, both of them gasping at the connection, physical and emotional, bodies and souls intertwined. They moved together in perfect rhythm, years of learning each other's bodies, creating harmony. I love you, he breathed against her neck, hips rolling in deep, measured strokes. My brilliant, courageous, impossible wife. I love you, she gasped, nails tracing patterns on his back. My storm, my partner, my everything. The pleasure built slowly, deliciously, neither of them rushing. This wasn't desperate coupling or angry reconciliation. This was celebration, affirmation, two people completely in sync. When she came apart beneath him, crying his name, he followed moments later, burying his face in her neck and holding her like she was his anchor to reality. Afterward, they lay tangled together, skin cooling in the night air, hearts gradually slowing. Kael's fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder while she mapped the planes of his chest. Lucien thought he would destroy us, Kael said quietly into the darkness. He didn't understand that fire purifies, doesn't destroy. Ariya turned to face him, their noses nearly touching. We're not the same people we were before all this. We're better, stronger. Do you think there will be others? Other threats? Probably. She smiled without fear. Your world, our world, doesn't forgive easily, but we'll face them together. Like we face everything now. They rose eventually, pulling on robes, and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Seoul spread before them like a carpet of stars, the city they'd nearly lost, the empire they'd rebuilt together. Kael stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. What do you see when you look out there? Possibility, she answered. Our future, your legitimate business ventures, my international design firm, maybe someday a family. Children who'll grow up seeing their parents as equal partners, not possessor and possession. I like that vision. He kissed her temple. I like everything about our future. Let them all underestimate us, Ariya said softly, covering his hands with hers. Let them think we're weak because we love each other. Let them think we're vulnerable because we're partners. We know the truth, Kael murmured against her ear. We know what we're capable of together, she finished. Far below, in the shadows between buildings where streetlights couldn't quite reach, a figure watched their window with patient, calculating eyes. Lucien had been one threat, but the world they inhabited bred vendettas like gardens bred weeds. There would be others, other enemies, other schemes, other tests. But high above Seoul, in their tower of glass and moonlight and hard-won peace, Ariya and Kael stood together. Equal partners, united front, two people who'd walked through fire and emerged not just intact but transformed. Whatever came next, they would face it the way they'd faced everything since choosing each other for real, together. And that, they both knew, was their greatest strength and their most powerful weapon.